everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week, and this is going to be the astro weather for the week of October the 13th through the 20th, 2024. I hope you guys are doing well, enjoying your weekend. Back at it with another video. Please be sure to give me a thumbs up if you like this video and consider hitting the bell button and subscribing to the channel. And leave me a comment below with how you're feeling with the energies this week. All right, so we got some Venus stuff going on. We're actually going to be putting a little bit of emphasis on the ingress of Venus moving into the fire sign of Sagittarius. So if you guys stay tuned to the end of the video, I will take you through Venus moving into the sign through the 12 rising signs so you can see where Venus is sprinkling her sweetness over the next month in your life. But if we're going to go in sequential order, honestly, there is a shocking Venus-Uranus opposition that is brewing over the next couple days. We're going to see Venus moving through the sign of Scorpio come into an opposition with Uranus in Taurus. Lots of financial shakeups, unexpected changes in relationships, love, money, all of that stuff. So be mindful that that's how we're starting the week off, followed by quite a big, fiery, and feisty full moon in Aries. We're going to be seeing that as well. A bit of a Chiron theme there because it's in conjunction to Chiron. So if you guys have not caught my full moon in Aries video, make sure you check that out. It's a really big one. Even though this is not a lunar eclipse, it is kind of seeded from a solar eclipse that we had in the spring of 2024. So all of you guys who have Aries placements, about 22 to 26 degrees, or the cardinal signs, be mindful, things get a little heated. We will also see the beginning of an extended Sun in Libra coming into a square with Mars in Cancer. So we get a little testy this week. There's a lot of Mars themes in the sky. Essentially, this is where we're kind of shining a light on relationships and where relationship action and diplomacy is a big theme, and it's coming into a square with Pluto, right? God of the underworld. So there is a little bit of like power struggles and changes in relationships, but also highlighting that we have to work together to be able to overcome some of the biggest challenges. Now, as you guys are watching this, Pluto is now direct. So we have like the final countdown. Really, the next month, Pluto is moving forward in the last moments of the sign of Capricorn. 29 degrees is a critical degree. So it's important to really know where Capricorn is in your chart because, well, we have to finish the job. So there's something that we're kind of finishing off. I have heard so much from you guys, so many comments and messages and emails and stuff, people telling me their Pluto and Capricorn stories. I know it's intense, especially if you are a cardinal sign, but things are going to ease up next month. But really for everybody, Pluto and Capricorn is big changes revolving around power, structures, career, responsibility. So the pressure is on as we kind of face these final weeks before Pluto finally moves into Aquarius for the better part of the next 20 years. And that will be in November, right around the third week of November. If you need help with that transit, there is tons of stuff on my channel. I actually talk about Pluto going direct this last week. I also have a Pluto in Capricorn webinar that can be really helpful for kind of getting with the program and maybe spending the next couple weeks buckling down and making some significant life changes. Now, Venus will be entering into Sagittarius, so this is good news for Sag, Sun, Moon, Rising, or personal placements. If you happen to have a natal Venus in Sagittarius, it means at some point over the next month, your Venus return is coming up. And I think this is going to be nice. I like the aspects that we're going to see for the most part. It's going to be interesting to see Venus in opposition to Jupiter at some point. And obviously, we'll see some mutable T-squares to both Saturn as well as Neptune in Pisces. But that's down the road. We don't need to worry about that this week. And I'm going to take you guys through the themes of Venus and Sagittarius and how to kind of best work with this transit. And then finally, when we get to the weekend, about a week from this Sunday, we are going to start feeling the lead up to the Sun coming into square with Pluto. So if you guys have been following along in recent weeks, we have seen Venus square Pluto. Today, actually, on the 13th of October, Mercury is in a square to Pluto, so mind your words. And then the sun will come into a square with Pluto. So there's kind of like a theme that's been brewing for a little while where I think Venus first squared, and that really brought up challenges and diplomacy in love and money. Maybe some power struggles, maybe some themes revolving around jealousy, possession, kind of like, you know, breakdown in relationship. But for some of us, it could be breakthrough. And then today on the 13th, we're seeing Mercury square Pluto. So this means that we might feel like we're like under interrogation. There may be this feeling also of our mind is kind of under pressure. Like there's lots of a need to like dig deeper in conversation and relationships with other people. And usually with this aspect, we see some kind of exposure that comes forward. So Mercury at 29, Pluto at 29, these are critical degrees where the square represents the need to overcome a challenge. Thankfully, whether it was Venus, Mercury, or eventually down the road later in this week, we'll see the sun come into a square with Pluto. 2 is better than 1, so we can work together to overcome some of these challenges. Squares from Libra to Capricorn do represent the need for balance, right? Also, I think a lot of this is about integrity, as Pluto can kind of play some dirty tricks. It can be about some of the things that happen in the shadows. It can be about crime. It can be about corruption. And really, this is teaching us that if we're dealing with some monsters in the closet, we need to work with other people to kind of unpack some of those things. So it can be fears, it can be trauma, also disclosure about how we're really feeling in relationships. That is the theme all week long. So watch for that lead up to the sun square Pluto. And maybe what I'll do is I'll show you guys Venus, actually, when Venus was in a square to Pluto, so you can kind of tie that together. So let me show that to you guys really quick. So it looks like Venus was in a square with Pluto right around like the 22nd and the 23rd of September, okay? So this is when Venus squared Pluto at 29. So now we take this to the 13th of October. Here we go. And now we have Mercury square Pluto, all right? So whenever we're dealing with squares, yes, we feel the intensity. Pluto is also about kind of making a significant change or saying, that's it, I'm done. You know, I've heard you guys telling me that you're like, I'm quitting my job, or I'm ending the relationship, or I'm finally moving. So big turning points, I think we've been feeling. Venus has been about what we're feeling since the end of September. And now that we get into mid-October, now the mind is on board with like, yes, now I really have to tell them that I'm leaving, or give my, you know, resignation, or sign the lease, or make the necessary change. And Libra does involve other people. So what you'll see later in the week, maybe we're taking the action, especially as the sun is coming into a square with Mars. And obviously, this makes us realize that we need other people too, or that other people are kind of affected or included in some way in some of the changes that we are making when it comes to the Capricorn area of our chart, our responsibility, our status, right? It can also be our role out in the world. And then the squares to Mars and Cancer is how that's impacting us emotionally, how it's pushing us to evolve, to mature, to pay attention to our emotions, as well as maybe make some changes in the domestic home zone. So it can be movement, rearranging of homes, you know, moving, reorganizing, and obviously dealing with like family and people that we live with, and maybe even like our local communities a little bit. So there's a lot going on. Let me talk to you first a little bit about Venus and Sag, and then we'll kind of move through the transits for the week ahead. But Venus will be in the sign of Sagittarius from October 17th through November 11th, 2024. Now, if you're ruled by Venus, so if you are a Taurus or a Libra rising, this is an important transit for you as Venus is on the move. So Venus moving into a new house is going to be shining a light on a different area of your chart and kind of highlighting where you're going, what you're doing, what themes you're going to be dealing with. Now, some key dates, and I'll put these in the description below so you guys have them. But obviously on the 17th, Venus is going to move into Sagittarius. Then we will see on the 22nd of October that Venus will trine the North Node in Aries. We'll talk about that as we get closer, but I will say that that feels very in alignment with the people we're supposed to meet, right? The indulgences we're supposed to have, the adventures we're supposed to go on, right? Sagittarius is obviously a mutable fire sign ruled by Jupiter. So this can be a time where right around the 22nd, certain alignments with relationships are happening, or certain trips or certain things that we're learning about relationships, love, or money can kind of come up. The North Node helps us grow. So I do think that that's going to be a beneficial aspect that we're going to see next week. And then on the 28th of October, Venus will come into a square with Saturn in Pisces. Now, Saturn will still be retrograde, and we know that Saturn is almost treated like a stop sign, or it can be about slowing down. There can be some limitations or delays, and this can be in regards to finances, relationship commitment, relating to other people, even anything revolving around beauty, aesthetics, investment, that kind of stuff. So make a note that as we get closer to the 28th, that is not going to be the best day to be like getting engaged, planning a wedding, making a big investment, making some significant cosmetic change, because Venus is kind of getting checked by Saturn. Now, at least in this situation, we're going to see another superior square. So in the same way that I was saying that Libra's got a lot of power over kind of Pluto and Capricorn, Sagittarius has a lot of power over these squares that will inevitably kind of take place to both Saturn as well as Neptune and Pisces. So it's almost like, I think of Sagittarius, and like they're always on the pursuit of truth. And so I feel like Venus going through Sagittarius, while it can be exciting and kind of like more active, there is this sense of wanting to know or wanting to get to the truth of the matter. And that can be about relationships and how we really feel in relationships. And some of us might feel like we don't really know, who we're with until we travel with somebody, right? So you're like on a 6-hour plane ride, or you're in a car for several hours, or you're having to kind of like learn a lot about your guys' values and beliefs. And the more that you kind of discuss and talk about that, the more you realize like who you're partnered with. So that may be some of the themes, but still not some of the best aspects around the 28th as Venus squares Saturn. And we'll see either some disappointments in love, some delays with money, transactions. And Sagittarius and Pisces are both ruled by Jupiter. So this is going to also be about cultural divide and differences. It can be also philosophical, beliefs that kind of differ from other people. And it can be this setup where there can be some conflicts in relationships, and it comes down to like our culture, where we're from, what we believe in, what our religious kind of beliefs are. And we can see some clash as a result of some of those differences. Now, then we will see on November the 3rd, Venus will come into opposition with Jupiter in Gemini. And I'm very curious to see how that aspect materializes, because in many ways, Jupiter and Venus are both like benefics, right? Venus wants to give us pleasure, love. It wants to give us also the opportunity to feel close to someone else. It can also be blessing us, right? With resources and like richness. And Jupiter wants to do the same thing. It's less in an emotional sense. It's more in I want to give you more money. I want to help you expand. I want to help you travel. So certainly on November the 3rd, there's going to be some big fluctuations and changes, because Jupiter magnifies things when it comes to love and money. Maybe I'm biased. I have Jupiter needly in opposition to Venus. And I feel like what's really nice about that aspect is that like you can dream big. Like when it comes to relationships, romance, it can also be about being able to learn through our relationships with other people and kind of close the divide based off of like culture or belief systems and all of that fun stuff. So for some people, the Venus-Jupiter opposition could be that there's a really amazing relationship opportunity that comes at a distance. It could be that we are indulging a little bit more in traveling. And that's going to be a transit to watch, because Jupiter is the ruler of Sag. So it's kind of bouncing off of the Venus transit. Now, the very same day, we will also see Venus come into a trine with Chiron in Aries. So we have a harmonious aspect with the trine on the 3rd, where we can heal, right? We can heal something about ourselves. We can heal wounds, and we can feel more open and receptive to love. We can be changing our beliefs. We can be a little bit more optimistic, and also I think a little bit more brave as we're approaching new relationship or financial opportunities. So I do think that November 3rd may actually be a better aspect than maybe we think. I don't know, we'll have to see. Finally, on November the 9th, we are going to see Venus in Sagittarius come into a square with Neptune in Pisces. And just as a reminder, like both of these planets are retrograde. So you may want to kind of refer back to what happened on the 28th of October when Venus came into a square with Saturn and we had some delays, or we were hesitating, or maybe we weren't feeling as like confident. And then Venus square Neptune is a day where I guess the positive is we can be more sensitive, we can be more compassionate. That's pretty much the only positive thing I could say about a Venus Neptune square. The challenges of this is that, you know, there is a likelihood of getting like bamboozled, or perhaps, you know, getting catfished, you know, or maybe we are making a purchase and we're basing it off of a picture or an image, and then it comes in the mail, and then we're like, this is not what it's not the same color, it's not the same size, it's not what I ordered, you know, and there is this realization that there was like a filter or something that was distorted when it comes to what we were like loving or believing in. So there could be some chaos because of confusion with love and money. There can also be a sense of something that is kind of breaking down, because Neptune does dissolve things. Now it can dissolve the themes of separation, right, through love. I guess Venus Neptune can do that. We can learn to be more open, receptive, compassionate. We can practice empathy. You know, we can be more generous and kind of giving with other people who are in need. But I do feel like whenever I see Venus square Neptune, there's this sense of like, where are we going? Like, where are we going with this investment? Like, what's going to happen? How are things going to kind of turn out? Where are we going with this relationship? You know, am I not seeing the red flags because I'm wearing rose-colored glasses? And is there a sense of somebody who's dipping out or being kind of evasive in a relationship? So the Venus in Sagittarius transit starts out very strong, I think, with like Venus trine the North Node, Venus opposed, you know, Jupiter, Venus trine Chiron. But the Venus square Saturn, Venus square Neptune are going to be days where we're going to be perhaps a little bit more beside ourselves and questioning, you know, what the future holds with some of these like Venusian topics. So be mindful of love and money when you see those two particular squares. Now, like I said, Venus is, as it goes through Sagittarius, it's going to be directly tied to Jupiter, because Jupiter is the dispositor. It traditionally rules Sagittarius, and Jupiter is now retrograde. So this means that some of the lessons that we're learning in love can very much be internal. We are internalizing and reworking and rethinking where we can go in relationships, how far we're willing to kind of go to meet people. And it can also be a time where, you know, we can be feeling very inspired. I think Sagittarius is a very inspiring sign. But watch Jupiter throughout the transit. When other planets are conjuncting Jupiter, squaring Jupiter, trining Jupiter, that's going to light this Venus transit up kind of like a Christmas tree. And Venus is also associated with the South Node, which is in Libra, where for just a few more months until we get to the beginning of 2025, we are doing a lot of karmic untangling, I guess we should say, when it comes to relationships and dealing with the past, our relationship patterns. It can be becoming too attached to certain people. Maybe it can be about being too indecisive. It can be about being fickle, you know, or having surface relationships, or being a people pleaser. So there is this sense wherever Venus is that it's going to be showing us the themes from the South Node. So Sagittarius obviously is in positive harmonious aspect with Libra. So it's, what are we learning about relationships? What have they taught us? What has the past taught us? And what experiences have we had? And how are we growing and learning through those? How are we teaching through those experiences as well? And then finally, Uranus is in Taurus. It is also retrograde. And, you know, Uranus is in a Venusian sign. So Venus is also kind of playing off of that Uranus retrograde, which means we are seeing lots of destabilization, changes going on with resources, with money, things revolving around our personal possessions, our security, as well as banking. Uranus and Taurus is a banking aspect. So it's going to be interesting to see Venus oppose Uranus this week, where like anything can go. You know, I've seen Venus-Uranus aspects where, you know, suddenly, you know, people have love at first sight. And then I've seen situations where, you know, people are gambling or they're risking or they're investing, and then something kind of falls flat and it goes to zero. And it is at 26 degrees. So I do anticipate this week the Venus-Uranus aspect is probably going to be some really crazy themes revolving around debt, banking, things connected to taxes, things connected to other people's money. So it can be about loans and bonds. The bond market is also kind of connected to Taurus as well. So we're going to see some kind of crazy stuff happen with the opposition, where we might see a little bit of like whiplash in the market. And then Venus is inevitably later in the week going to come into a square to Saturn. And so I do not feel so optimistic about some of the financial implications with this over this next week. Now, obviously, one other point I want to make is that in the end of November, okay, going into December, we will see a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. So that's going to be a colorful one. You guys have heard me talk about it, but as we get closer, you'll see why. But that is interesting to me because Mercury is going to turn retrograde right around the same degrees of where Venus in Sag will make an opposition to Jupiter, okay? And obviously it's a wide square, but it's still a square to Neptune. So that can make the deception bigger, the confusion bigger, you know, the dissolving bigger. And it could be in a multitude of different ways. I'm going to go through the themes, but something I just want to kind of bring up is that right around the time Venus starts to get around that 21, 22 degrees, it is going to be giving us some faint whispers of potentially what might be getting reworked or reassessed during the Mercury retrograde at the end of November into December. Both, I mean, the opposition to Jupiter as well as I think the square to Saturn and Neptune is going to be quite a doozy. It's going to be, I think, a time where we'll see delays, obviously, with travel, right? Sagittarius deals with international travel. It could be airlines. This could also be more weather stuff that's coming up later in the year. And it's also connected to the ninth house themes, which can be like college, universities. It could be the court systems, things revolving around, you know, like legality, and much, much more. So Venus going there means that we're now opening up to some of these themes, or we're now starting to see some of these themes kind of unfold. And then Mercury will perhaps go back and forth and will kind of change its mind or get new information or bring something up that, quite frankly, we didn't know or we weren't aware of. So it can be that we meet someone and we fall in love with them, and then there is this reassessment of, well, wait a second, what are we doing? You know, in about a month's time. So just keep an eye on that, especially if you're like a mutable sign. I would say the mutable signs are definitely gonna feel the impact of that very strongly, all of you guys, because it's going to either conjunct, square, or oppose something, especially Virgo, because you guys will be the one sign that's kind of missing. So as we get closer to that, you know, and Mercury inevitably gets into Sagittarius, we'll do a Mercury retrograde video on it. But yeah, I'm curious to see how this transit kind of manifests, because at the very least, Venus is a beneficial planet. It wants to have us open up to something that feels good, right? And it is ruled by Jupiter in this sign, which is very beneficial. But what is too sweet, right? What is too much? What is overdoing it, overindulging? What is, you know, almost like too good to be true? These are some things that kind of come to mind for me, knowing that both Venus as well as Mercury are going to oppose Jupiter and square Saturn. And we can be too overly optimistic, obviously, with Jupiter in Gemini, because it's kind of moving through the sign that is in its fall. All right, so let's get into a little bit about Venus. Obviously, you guys know, Venus is traditionally associated both with Taurus as well as Libra. But when we look at astrology in general, Venus represents, relationships, beauty, art, luxury, pleasure, social graces, as well as diplomacy. So when Venus moves through a sign, it's going to still be focusing on those topics, but it's going to be expressing its energy through the lens of the sign that it's in. So on the topic of love and relationship, right? Venus governs like how we love and how we relate to other people and how we form partnerships and what we find attractive or what we are maybe kind of like approaching or our approach to romance. And so Venus also deals with values. So this is like our tastes or preferences. It can also be about, material possessions and kind of like aesthetic themes that can come up when Venus is in any given sign. Art, beauty, anything connected to creativity, to fashion, that can be another connection with Venus, and comfort or pleasure. I always think of Venus as a flower that is opening up to something. So whatever brings us comfort, pleasure, enjoyment. It's also about, you know, food and kind of like sensual experiences, and obviously money, right? Venus's influence, I think, is really going to be about how we're spending money rather than how we're earning it. And it can also be about our social status and like what we possess and like how people perceive us. So when we put this under the lens of Sagittarius, you know, we talked about how Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so it does make things bigger. There is this sense of luck and expansion and doing things in a very big way. So big shows of affection, you know, or it can be valuable gifts or lavish kind of vacations in this sign. And it's also about higher knowledge, you know, philosophy and belief. But Sagittarius is a sign that's known for adventure and travel. So this can also be throughout this transit, bringing up like the desire to explore, and not just in a physical landscape, but it can also be like religion, spirituality, and like seeking truth with our partners or relationships. It's also a fire sign, so it loves freedom and independence. You know, it's known for being very optimistic and enthusiastic because it's ruled by Jupiter. I do feel like Sag placements are known for being honest as well as sincere because they're very direct and sometimes blunt with their honesty, but that's because they value, you know, truth over tact sometimes. And they really love higher education, learning, and there can also be more of a sense of leaning into like sports or physical activity because it's a fire sign. So there can be more doing things with other people outdoors or physical endeavors that we can be kind of doing with our partners, all right? So Venus and Sag, in a nutshell, look for opportunities, I think, you know, for optimism and adventure. And it could be good for long distance relationships. It could be good for taking like an art class or learning something revolving around art or finances. And also there is this theme of like seeking freedom within relationships, both literally or like, you know, emotionally, kind of needing like a little bit more freedom in some of our relationships. Not that we can't commit, but there is a sense of being like, I need more, right? And that kind of coming up for us personally. I also think that this is going to be a time where we might be seeking deeper meaning, as well as like more of a spiritual connection in some of our relationships. We might be learning more about relationships. We might be planning trips, you know, going to places with one another, and trying to find new ways to kind of keep things exciting. And I do think that this is an extravagant placement because it is connected to Jupiter. So there can be like extravagant spending or a desire for, you know, lots of physical goods. And there can be a tendency also to want to like purchase luxury things or exotic items. So that's something else that you can see with Venus and Sagittarius is like, you know, not just getting, you know, the perfume, but like, no, I want the perfume that comes from like France, you know, or that specific chocolate that comes from, you know, like South America, or like whatever, like really indulging in things that are very rich in culture and beauty. And they may be a little bit more exotic or like different or unusual and come from different parts of the world. Now, if you're a Venus and Sag native, you know that you are freedom loving, right? I always like affectionately refer to Venus and Sag or Venus in the ninth or like Sagittarius rising as like the bachelor or bachelorette placements of the zodiac. And I think a lot of this is because, you know, Venus and Sag people generally, they don't want to have a sense of feeling constricted in a relationship, right? They really love personal freedom. And there's a preference for partners who are willing to share their adventurous spirit and also their intellectual curiosity. So these are people who can do the long distance. They can go back and forth, you know, they can be a little bit more spontaneous and adventurous, and they can go off for a period of time and come back and then, you know, come back to their partner. But they also have a tendency sometimes to be a little idealistic. That can definitely happen because they have a tendency to, with that Jupiter rulership, to idealize love. And sometimes this can lead to disappointment when reality doesn't always match the vision. And that can be them having that perspective of their partners or their partners having that kind of perspective of them, especially when you see like Venus in aspect to Saturn or Neptune. So it's going to be interesting for those of you guys who don't have that to see what that kind of feels like as we see Venus come into squares with these two planets. Now for like Venus and Sag, when it comes to money, they're generous, right? I love Venus and Sag or Venus and ninth or like Jupiter Venus aspects because these people, they have a tendency to be very generous with other people, right? They like to spend money. They like to indulge. Generally, this is going to be on travel, education, and experiences that are going to broaden their horizons, but they're also going to be the ones who are going to upgrade their, their ticket to first class. They're going to pay more for the extra baggage. They're going to get the bigger hotel room, and they're going to see the benefit of being able to really kind of spend the fruit of their labor on experiences. This is about experiences. It's a fire sign. It's not always about physical things. So we're willing to spend more for the experience, for the adventure. They are also risk-taking. So I've seen a lot of people who have Venus in Sag or Venus-Jupiter aspects or ninth house that they love investing in anything speculative, especially if it's supporting causes that they believe in. So if it's like a startup or a tech business or a travel business, or maybe it's just going to be something that's more about assisting and kind of helping people or educating people. Those ventures, they have a tendency to kind of want to get a little bit more invested or involved in. So yes, in relationships, over this next couple of weeks, just in general, we may feel a little, we're going to feel friendly, but some of us might feel a little fickle in love. All right. So you guys might see that because of some of the squares to Saturn and Neptune. I don't think it's going to inhibit us from being able to socialize. I just feel like commitment in this sign is not always the name reason to get involved. They're more focused on the experience rather than commitment in itself. And as long as things are evolving and you're growing and you're going and you're doing things and you're in the moment, right? Fire, you can enjoy yourself. But this is not a time where we're seeking commitment unless we really feel like we are aligning with somebody who we have the same kind of philosophy and belief systems as. Watch also for people in relationships being a little bit more honest and blunt. I think that that's going to be a theme. Yes, sometimes we can be a little bit more direct in our approach to relationships with Venus and Sagittarius, a little bit more to the point. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that some people are going to be a little taken back by just how kind of direct and charismatic some people can kind of be in relationships with this transit. Now, during this Venus and Sag transit, just in general, in terms of like global events, we will notice that there is going to be much more increased focus on international relationships. And this could be perhaps embracing cultural exchanges or even humanitarian efforts. There could be, women that are recognized out in the world for their leadership skills, for their art, for their beauty, for their design. That can be a theme because Venus is, women. We're going to probably hear more revolving around news connecting to the travel business. And I'm thinking about like Venus in opposition to Jupiter square Saturn and Neptune. And I'm like, ooh, that could really create some issues for the airlines. That could create some issues for import and export and how that directly impacts the auto industry. That can also really nail anything revolving around cruise lines, ships, boats, those kinds of things, because Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces. So we could see some issues there. Maybe some challenges in sending and receiving goods. I think the Mercury retrograde, we're going to see slowdown and issues kind of going on with the mail system as we get closer to November as well. Educational reforms, legislative changes concerning foreign affairs, right? Venus relations. Venus and Sag, foreign affairs relations. And the opposition to Jupiter is whether or not we're seeing eye to eye and we can be diplomatic and optimistic about being able to be on the same page about where we're all going globally, even if we all live in separate countries or places. Are we on the same page about how we are wanting to kind of, share some of the same values maybe, and like international laws and rules and regulations, and like whether or not that is beneficial, our unions and our relationships for the collective, right, Pisces, and how we are coming together and trying to relate better to each other under Pisces related themes. Weather events, flooding, immigration, religion, things revolving around isolation, borders. All of these things are going to be kind of coming up, and there's going to be some people who are going to say, look, we want to dissolve things. We don't no longer want to have relations with this, country, or we're maybe not so fond of being allies any longer. And then there's going to be others that are going to say, look, we'll put our differences aside. What can we do to overcome some of these challenges? I would just say watch for some of like the philosophical and cultural and religious like debates, like that, like stuff that comes up under those topics, and not either knowing what you're talking about or saying things that could be offensive, or perhaps like not standing up in support of allies and other people, even if they have a different culture, a different religion, a different belief system. What does that say about us? And so that's going to be a reflection, because Venus can also be about a reflection of us, the things that we don't say, and if we're not sticking up for other people who may be defenseless or need support. So we'll see some people put their culture, religion, and differences aside to support those who are in need, and like really show the true value, I think, of Venus in Sag, which is loving and not seeing colors or cultures or genders or religious kind of beliefs, like seeing each other as human beings, and being able to kind of bridge the gaps in some of this stuff. So that's kind of the Venus in Sag in a nutshell. So like I said, we will see this transit that will be taking place for us this week. On the 17th, Venus will enter Sagittarius, and it will stay there until November the 11th. So we've got a little less than a month of this transit, and then we will see Venus go into the sign of Capricorn. So let's go ahead and get into the week ahead. Let's take a look at what we've got happening. Obviously, we're going to start with today, Sunday the 13th. Hello to all of my Sunday crew. I hope you guys are doing well. Obviously, if you're new to my channel, every Sunday I do like an overview for what's kind of coming up this week. And last week we talked about the 13th, and I told you guys there is stuff going on today. How are you guys feeling today, right? Do you feel the vibe in the air right now with some of the squares? It's there. So let's talk about the positive aspects of Sunday, and then we'll get into the challenging aspects. But I think you guys are going to fall into one of two camps. When you wake up this morning, the moon's in Aquarius, which means we want to party, right? We want to be with other people. We want to socialize. We want to go and be where the people are. And there is this sense of wanting to be along groups or friends or collectives, and like kind of getting together with other people. The moon is forming a grand air trine between Jupiter in Gemini, which is expanding communication, travel, and learning, and the sun in Libra. So air trines mean that it's social, it's about information, it's about being a little bit more free, a little bit more mobile. And I really hope you guys are doing something with people today, because that's the way that you're going to navigate some of the other challenges that we are going to start feeling as we get into later in the morning and into the day. If you don't have plans this morning, call your best friend. Be like, get ready, I'm going to be there in an hour. Like, I'm serious. Or tell your family, hey, let's all get together and go have breakfast, or let's all take the kids to the park. Like, collective coming together and socializing is how you want to use today, right? So hopefully you guys already made plans. If you didn't, no worries, there's still time to do that. But this is what I'm encouraging you guys to do, because there's some other things going on in the background that feels like kind of gritty, in my opinion. The other thing to take into consideration is, even though we have this lovely little air trine, the moon is still kind of in a square to Uranus. Granted, it's early in the morning, so if you're watching me right when this video comes out, know that the moon square Uranus means people can kind of be a little on edge. They can be a little edgy about making changes and kind of getting out of their comfort zone. But besides that, not entirely too bad. This is where stuff gets a little edgy. We've got Mercury at 29 squaring off with Pluto. So like I said, go back and see what was happening around September 22nd, ish, where Venus was square Pluto. Now Mercury square Pluto is bringing up this intense communication aspect where, like I said, to me it feels like interrogation. It's like, what are you doing? Where have you been? What's going on? And it feels very critical in that we're being pressed by other people, and there can definitely be some words that are being exchanged where we're feeling kind of threatened or we're feeling bullied. Words really bite today. So what you're saying, how you're communicating, it may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, especially looking at Venus starting to come into opposition with Uranus. And obviously, Venus is in her fall in Scorpio, so she's a little touchy. That Mercury square Pluto is not the time to force a conversation or a relationship, to try to get somebody to sign a contract, to try to get somebody to commit to something. We want to lean into the air trine and be a little bit more easygoing. It's okay, you got stuff going on, no worries, call me when you're available. I hope you can make it, like that kind of vibe. Because if we're pressing people, or if we're digging for information or details, like, you're going to find it, or you're going to get the answer, and it's probably not going to be the answer that you want, or it's probably not going to be relayed in the fashion that you want. And this is a time where there is a lot of exposure in the air this next week. Mercury square Pluto, Sun and Mars square, Sun coming into square with Pluto. Like, there is some stuff that's going to start coming out in the world. And I look at Pluto at 29 degrees and I'm like, the next month, it's going to be something else. This is like giving me like 2020 PTSD. Like, when I think about how Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto were all in conjunction, and we were seeing those eclipses also with like the South Node. So this is the completion of stuff that's been brewing since 2008, where there has been full-blown corruption going on, whether it's big business, three-letter agencies, government officials, whatever. And now that Pluto's awake, it is willing to kind of fight back a little bit. So I believe that this is the final moment of there having been major abuses of power. I think this is the end of it, personally. That's what I choose to believe in. I believe that the astrology will prevail, and Pluto going into Aquarius is going to be a mass awakening. And, we've had little snippets over this last year or so with Pluto going in and out of Aquarius, but it's really happening over the next 2 years, guys. We are going to see all outer planets changing signs. Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter. I mean, they're all going to go into new signs next year, and they're all going to aspect each other. They're all going to sextile each other, right? Or trine each other. So there's going to be, I think, over the next month, an intense feeling revolving around, well, are the bad guys going to win? Or are they going to take over again? Is there going to be some like mass kind of control? Maybe, but this is like the death rattle, right? You guys have heard me use that phrase before. I worked for a while as a death midwife, and I didn't know what that was until I experienced it. And I didn't know that right when somebody was like on their last breath, there is like this rattle that comes out of the body, which if you haven't heard it before, unless you work in hospice or maybe you've worked in medical, it's like, what is that? Pluto at 29 degrees, it gives me the creeps because it makes me think of that. That's just like the last final exhale as it's finally throwing in the towel and giving up. But Pluto at 29 is the destroyer degree. So what's happening is that we can say things today that can destroy relationships. We can read things today that can be shattering. We can have realizations or conversations or therapy sessions or journaling sessions where we just have this realization and we're like, oh my God, I know what I have to do. Venus felt it last month. Mercury knows it today. And at the end of this week, you're going to put that plan into action and you're going to kind of kill something off and get rid of it because it no longer has power over you. So the Mercury square Pluto it's touchy, and it's playing off of Venus, right? Because Venus is connected to Libra. So like with the Uranus, it's like, well, if you don't give me this, I'm not giving you that. And like, Lord knows, Scorpio and Taurus placements here can be super petty. Then it can be relationship issues over money and squabbles with friendships over money and kind of like tit for tat. And we do not want to get involved in that. Especially since that moon is not just squaring Uranus, it's also squaring Scorpio. Right? So it's like, I could see some people like, squabbling over the bill and kind of people having some conflict over it. Like, don't get sucked into some of that stuff is my recommendation. Lean into the Sun trine Jupiter. That's positive, harmonious, optimistic. It feels like anything is possible, that the right people are there to support us, and like we can genuinely have a good time and have enriching relationships. Something else that's happening in the background is now the Sun is at 20 degrees. It's going to hit 21 today. So the Sun's coming into a square with Mars. And for me, I think about how, Mars in Cancer is very emotionally turbulent, right? This is choppy waters. So with Mars at 21, it's also coming into a square with Chiron. So we're going to see Mars square Chiron, where we can have individual wounds coming up because of some conflict or hostility or issues coming up from the past or with our family, our roommates, where we live. And then the Sun is opposing that. So technically, it's a T-square by degree, but the Sun square Mars makes me feel like this is where people are showing up and they're saying, can I help you? Can I support you? What do you need? And we get kind of irritated. We can get kind of irritated because there's, too many people in the kitchen. We get kind of irritated because, a partner's following us around, or, kids are a little bit more demanding and like kind of clingy, right? That can happen with this square as well. The Sun is our ego. And with the sun squaring Mars, I feel like there can be some ego issues in relationships that are going on. And it doesn't have to be this sense of us competing against each other, right? If we're competing against each other with sun in opposition to Chiron, everybody gets hurt in square Mars. But instead, if we're looking at this going like, okay, there's a conflict, something's brewing, in the Cancer area of our life, and we can either work together and we can be a team, which, dream team here, or we can work against each other. And if we're working against each other, then it's going to create more conflict, hostility, like agitation, like work together. So many people, you're going to see people who are going to split off into two camps today and tomorrow. They're ones that are going to be the helpers and the ones that are going to be resistant to that help. And you can only help those who want to help themselves. But if you have people who are, in need of help and you offer it, do so in a kind of gentle way. Don't push anybody right now, because people's buttons are going to get pushed all over the place with this up and coming full moon in Aries. So that Sun square Mars, you're feeling it. Maybe you've been feeling it since last night. Certainly cutting, heat, rushing, fire, right? Conflict that can turn combative. I see Libra as kind of like a boxing ring. So we could see some people who could definitely be a little bit more willing to kind of stand up and fight. And I would say be careful, because some people will go toe to toe with you. So it's not a time to get kind of combative or confrontational. And then in the PM hours today, we're going to see the moon enter into Pisces. So very different vibe change. It becomes a little bit more mellow, a little bit more calm and reflective. So it'll be interesting to see the moon drop in around mid-afternoon. And then when the moon's in Pisces, we're looking at Jupiter. Well, the sun's trining Jupiter, which is saying, hey, slow down a second, talk to me. What's going on? Let's talk about this, Gemini. And then the square is going to come in at 21. So it looks like it's going to be later tonight. Okay. And 21 is Sagittarius. 21, 21, 21. So this is going to be a cardinal T-square exactly at 21 degrees. So if you have anything 20 to 22 degrees, the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, watch out. Some kind of action is kind of coming up where you're either going to react or you're going to be a part of a team. What's interesting about this is that the sun is also aligning with Juno. And so, Libra in general is about partnerships. And this can be our therapist, our clients, our friends, our romantic partners, our spouses. But Juno is the wife. So the sun conjunct Juno is saying we're shining a light on what does it mean to actually be a team player? What does it mean to be in a committed relationship? And the opposition to Chiron is saying partners or support systems or somebody outside of ourselves might be coming in to kind of help us maybe get out of our past patterns, our emotional reactions, our behavior, and very conflicting energy, because cardinal squares, they're like fireworks. It's like you just see stuff just pop off whenever they square each other, because they all want to do different things. They're like little generals. And the moon in Pisces is very kind of passive, and it's more kind of like, I'm going to go run and hide. As that moon comes into Pisces, also it's trining Mercury, which is now in Scorpio. So Mercury in Scorpio, after we saw Mercury go through the square with Pluto, then it drops into Scorpio. And with the moon in Pisces trine Mercury, it's like we can get to the bottom of the situation. We can reflect. We can be more intuitive, emotional, and compassionate. So there's a lot of really good communication aspects, believe it or not, even in the midst of some of this kind of like challenge. But once again, what are we learning about the challenges? 21 degrees. What do we learn in challenging situations? This is also about international situations, right? Sagittarius. Professors, education, law, legality, foreign travel, international relations. Obviously, Sun square Mars to me looks like, you've got somebody who's going to be on a power trip and they're going to stir the pot and create some conflict, and they might try to initiate some kind of like war-like, event. But then there is the aspect of somebody saying, if you do that, you're on your own. We're not going to back you. We can't support this opposition to Chiron. And so you might see some things in your own life where somebody's like getting all, hostile over something, and you're like, I'm not going to stand around and support this. So try to diffuse situations. I think that with that moon in Pisces trine Mercury, we can communicate more deeply, and the sun trine Jupiter is really encouraging us to really focus more on diplomacy and like working with one another and trying to find support from others rather than just kind of like, blowing up. And that'll hang around. That'll hang around Sunday all the way into Monday, right? So then we take this into Monday, which will be the 14th. And early in the morning, that moon's still in Pisces. It's coming into conjunction with Saturn, right? So we're going to have this feeling of being emotionally limited, restricted, being maybe or feeling as if we need to kind of hide out and stay in bed and isolate ourselves. It's difficult to communicate. It's difficult to share our feelings with other people during this transit, especially because Jupiter, the dispositor of both the moon, Saturn, and Neptune, is retrograde. And eventually, you know, the moon's going to come in conjunction with Saturn, Neptune, and also square Mercury. So this is like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Is it the right time? You know, and maybe you're waiting to respond back to somebody. Maybe you're like sleeping on something or thinking about something for a couple of days before you make a move. It's possible. But with that moon conjunct Saturn, there's like an emotional limit. There's a block. And obviously it's going to be in the Pisces area of your life, but it could be relating to home, family, emotions, responsibility, where lack of support is making you kind of get in your feelings. And when I think of moon Saturn, it's like, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. You know, but on the inside, you're like ugly crying a little bit and not entirely sure how to like respond to things. Now the Sun square Mars is happening kind of late last night into this morning. So it's still in the air. Okay. So it's not just Sunday night. It's going to go all the way into Monday. And if you really want to kind of like split hairs here, Pluto's at 29. So even like the Sun, Mars, Chiron stuff, this is a cardinal cross. This is a cardinal cross involving Pluto. It's just wide. And I don't think it's really going to be until like the full moon in Aries until the Sun squares Pluto at the end of this week that you're really going to feel the effects of it. But it's a long, drawn out square. Mars is already in shadow, guys. That means that it's in the degrees which it'll retrograde back through. So be mindful of your actions and your behavior because some of these things you're going to be kind of backtracking on, especially emotionally. That's kind of the feeling that I get, or in regards to home changes or family changes that we make. And then obviously we also see Venus now starting to come into an opposition with Uranus at 26. So it's about food, money, resources, banking, all Taurus degrees. It's about physical security. So I look at like Venus in opposition to Uranus going like, oh, you know, something's happening, or I feel like something's being taken away, or I'm kind of getting spooked about something going on financially. And then the moon conjunct Saturn, which is also this feeling of lack. Yeah, definitely like, I've heard a lot of clients last week, like a lot of back and forth over like property stuff, like home stuff, like, you know, people fighting over stuff, over what they keep or what they divide up or what they sell. So that does kind of ring true with some of the astrology, obviously, this week. And then the other aspect we're going to start to see will then be the moon conjunct Saturn. So that's right here around the early afternoon. And then we will see Venus come into the opposition in the PM hours. So it looks like it's going to happen like the early PM hours. I'm Central Time, but still it's in the skies all day. All right. So when that happens, when Venus opposes Uranus, the moon is conjunct Saturn and it's between Saturn and Neptune. And every single time, the last few months that we have seen the moon go between Saturn and Neptune, something has happened. It's like we had the debates, and then we also had stuff going on with Biden getting sick, and then we saw issues with bridges collapsing, and then we've seen issues with storms. You know, Pisces is oceans, waters, emotions, prisons, mental institutions, hidden spaces, all of that stuff. So to see the moon trapped between Saturn, which restricts, and Neptune, which dissolves, right when Venus is opposing Uranus, it makes me feel like this is going to be a day that is, you know, there's going to be some challenges that are going to kind of come up. But Pisces teaches me, it's like, okay, there's some stuff you can't control, and there's some things you don't see coming. And there are some times to just be like, okay, I'm gonna let Jesus take the wheel, you know, because Pisces is about our faith and what we believe in and what we're praying for, what we're meditating on. And so at least with this conjunction between the moon and Saturn, you know, we do see that eventually that moon is going to start coming into a trine with Venus, and we see Venus coming into a sextile with Pluto. So change is on the horizon with relationships, jobs, money. You know, that's inevitable for a lot of people. So maybe reflect a little bit on the 14th and be like, what am I willing to let go of? And like, why am I fighting this? You know, like if this is what has to happen, this is what has to happen. And not the best day to be making any big investments, purchases, trades, sales, agreements to relationships, especially with Venus in its fall and having Venus connected to Uranus. And yeah, I would not recommend that personally. So this is a day to be very, very mindful of some of those kind of financial and relationship things on the 14th. Now that moon's going to hang out in between Saturn and Neptune into the evening. You're not going to see much happen here. And then it looks like on the 15th, which is Tuesday, lots of lunar aspects this day. This is going to be really interesting. So Venus is now coming out of the opposition, right? We've got the moon, which very early in the morning will come into a square with Jupiter. So maybe something's going on globally around the 14th and the 15th weather-wise. Maybe there's something going on, you know, revolving around people feeling a little bit more afraid or limited or, you know, like not knowing how to process or deal with emotions. And then very early on the 15th, that starts to break as the moon is coming out of a square with Jupiter. Big news revolving around storms, communications, travel. That can definitely be a theme. Obviously, the Pisces eclipse and the transits that have been going through Pisces. I mean, we've seen it. There's been tons of flooding. There's been tons of storms. This has happened all over the planet. And it's not just limited to that. I mean, I think that the storms in the south got a lot of news, but there's been, I think, a insane amount of fires that have been happening in Montana. I believe it was Montana. And that could be Mars in Cancer. Right? Could be. And the sun squaring Mars, it's like, you know, that can create lots of dryness, that can create wind and other issues that can kind of continue to perpetuate some parts of the world that are either dealing with major, you know, heat advisories, or there could be wildfires, and that's not a good aspect for some of that stuff. Now, the last aspect that the moon is going to make before it leaves Pisces is a decent one, right? So it's also in a trine to Mars, by the way. So with that moon in Pisces trine Mars, we're feeling more emotionally like encouraged, determined, like there's some motivation. And then it looks like in the morning on Tuesday, then we see the moon come into conjunction with Neptune. This is at a 27, by the way. So this is kind of late in the morning. Moon conjunct Neptune, you know, trying to find your happy place, a place where you can kind of take a breath, take a nap, meditate, reflect, you know, dissolve, like let things go, especially at the late degrees. This can also be a time where people are kind of like worried or freaking out about something relating to water or some kind of news revolving around travel or weather. And it's going to trine Venus. So, you know, moon conjunct Neptune can make us all a little squirrely, but the trine to Venus is deep, passionate, intuitive. It's spiritual. Like this is a time where you really want to kind of maybe take a break on the 15th for lunch and just kind of tap in or go for a walk or be by water or, you know, find a little bit of inspiration time where you can do something creative and or spiritual. And that moon's also going to sextile Uranus, right? So it does make me feel like that change is on the horizon, that whatever we're willing to like let go of can bring in something new. It can also mean that we are, you know, envisioning, meditating, reflecting, manifesting some physical change. And then the moon's going to enter into Aries. Okay, so lots of lunar transits on Tuesday. It's like almost making contact with almost every planet. And then it's going to sextile Pluto. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the moon. So I kind of feel like Tuesday's the day that's like, okay, we're going to have to just let it go. And then in the early evening, the moon's going to move into Aries. Different vibe shift. Obviously, now we're focusing more on Aries energy, independence, activity, physical, you know, body stuff, things revolving around being active and focusing on our own goals and taking the initiative and like doing something about something. You know, maybe we've been in our feels earlier in the day and now we're like, okay, you know, I'm going to go burn off some steam and go to the gym, or I'm going to go for a brisk walk, or I'm going to initiate something. I'm not just going to sit and kind of wallow in it. What you will see is that when the moon goes through Aries, it's going to start coming into contact with the North Node. So let's look at that. And that's going to be later in the evening. But still, you know, whatever you're doing, on the 15th at night. It's about getting in alignment with what we're supposed to be doing, right? It's getting on the path. Like the North Node in Aries is where we're kind of striking the match. This is ruled by Mars, and there's mutual reception here. So with Mars in Cancer, we always want to know where the moon is because lunar transits are going to pack more of a punch. And this is now leading up into the full moon in Aries, which we will see on the 17th. So from the second that the moon goes into Aries and it's coming into contact with the North Node, I would say Tuesday night, this is a time to just kind of pay attention because we're going to start instinctually tapping in and knowing, okay, what am I supposed to do? The energies are building. There is going to be a full moon in the Aries portion of your chart. Whenever we have a full moon in Aries, it means that the sun is in Libra. So there is this kind of reflecting off of who am I in relation to other people? How am I emotionally getting triggered, reacting, or making personal changes in relation to others, good or bad? And this is going to be a very triggering, I think, full moon in Aries. And I'll show you guys why in a second. All right, so then we get to the 16th, which honestly, for the most part, really is not all that bad. I kind of feel like this is a day that's like kind of like eerily quiet. So we wake up on the 16th, which is Wednesday. The moon is in Aries. The moon is still connected to the North Node. So I would say like Tuesday night, Wednesday, pay attention to the events taking place as the moon hits the North Node. We're feeling some instinctual drive to do something. This is playing off of Mars, which it is not aspecting yet, but it will square. And Mars is in Cancer at a Capricorn degree. So where we're taking charge in our home, right? Where we are, overcoming or dealing with long-standing issues, where we got to work a little bit harder, clean a little bit more, be a little bit more emotionally attentive, where we may have to kind of directly deal with some challenges or conflicts revolving around like home or family related situations. But nevertheless, we do it anyway, right? So yeah, pretty quiet day on Wednesday. This is like the calm before the storm. So I look at this and I'm like, I would spend Wednesday getting as much stuff done as you can so you can kind of chill a little bit more when that full moon comes through on Thursday. But some of you guys are going to feel the energies early. Some of you guys are going to be like, I feel like something is coming. And the moon is very unaspected actually most of the day. We're not really seeing anything. Going into the PM hours, it's still in Aries. It's just building into the full moon, which will be happening really early on the 17th. So the other aspect that you're going to see, if you're a night owl, I mean, I'm Central Time, so this is going to be like, 1 in the morning. But the last real positive aspect that we're going to see involving the moon before we have the full moon is that the moon will sextile Jupiter. So if this were me, I would feel like doing your full moon stuff actually on the 16th, so Wednesday night. If you're somebody who's like, I like to burn my candles and set my intention and have an altar or like, journal or whatever, like do it on Wednesday. Don't do it on Thursday because Thursday there's too much stuff going on. The moon's going to come into a square with Mars. Then the moon will square Pluto. Like you're better off doing your full moon stuff on Wednesday night. And P.S., this is a moon that is obviously, it's going to be different for everybody depending on where it is, but the moon is conjunct Chiron. So the theme of this moon is like self-healing. And when I say self-healing, I don't mean like in a Taurus way where you're going to put on your robe and eat your snacks and just hang out and watch TV. I don't mean a self-healing way like Pisces where you're going to, have a bubble bath. Self-healing, full moon in Chiron in the sign of Aries to me is like, I'm taking it upon myself to get myself in order. Like I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to reorganize, my home. I am going to clean things up. I am going to initiate things. Like full moons are about major conclusions or completions. But if you don't have an outlet with this full moon, you're going to feel like you're getting thrown around like a freaking rag doll. Trust me, especially if you have cardinal placements. Because that moon, not only does it conjunct Chiron, where, we can have hot-ass emotional meltdowns, there can definitely be anger, frustration, inflammation, there can be tummy issues, there can be sinus issues, we can be feeling very agitated, like you need an outlet for this. So I like the idea of you guys doing something active or doing something that's empowering or maybe you're writing a list down of like everything that you feel like has gotten in your way, and then you burn it on Wednesday night, right? Like those are the kinds of things that you want to do. It's very gritty. This is not like a all like fluff, you know, kind of full moon, at least in my opinion. So what you'll see is, as we're coming into then the 17th, which is where we will have the full moon, which looks like that's going to be very early in the morning. That full moon is going to be at 24 degrees of Aries. All right, so it's conjunct Chiron. And obviously it opposes the sun, that is the full moon, but it's also opposing Juno, conjunct the sun. How many people are going through breakups? How many people are separating right now, or realizing that they're not happy in their relationship, or divorcing, or dumping a friend, or, you know, splitting off from a business partnership? Like, I'm curious. This full moon for me, I always affectionately refer to it as like the cuffing season moon. And that's because we have the full moon in Aries, which is like emotions and us kind of reacting to, you know, other people and relationships. And obviously we're coming into the fall here in the Northern Hemisphere. A lot of people want to kind of get into relationship, or this is where you start to kind of figure out where you're at with relationships. And I think that is the point of the full moon in Aries, the full moon in Libra too, but definitely in Aries. And where we can be feeling like wounded or emotionally kind of hurt, that, you know, we don't feel chosen, or we don't feel picked, or we don't feel like people are supporting us. And then you add that to the fact that it's ruled by Mars, which is in a lunar sign, so there's mutual reception, but they square each other. And 24, 22, 24, 29, welcome to the second half of the week, which will be now you feeling the effects of the sun coming into square with Pluto. Like, oh my God. You know, I think that this is a full moon for me where the positive, because I really want to focus on the positive, because I mean, some people look at the astrology and they're like, is at least we have a sextile to Jupiter. Granted, Jupiter's retrograde, but air and fire love each other, right? They fuel each other. So if you have fire and you blow on it, it's going to get bigger. It's going to get warmer. It can feel more exciting. It can feel more enthusiastic. You can feel more optimistic about the bridges you're burning down. You know, you could feel more optimistic about the fact that you finally decided to, you know, take a stand or take a chance or go after something or kind of push yourself. But the Mars, unfortunately, you know, being in a sign where it is not comfortable and in a square does not bode well for domestic harmony, relationship, you know, unity. I mean, you know, tough times create strong people. I really strongly believe that. And I think that's what comes to mind for me when I see Mars, you know, come into the square with the moon and Libra. And some people, you know, some people might look at this and go, I'm so frustrated, I'm so upset, you know, I don't really care what other people do, like, eh. And they just kind of burn the house down, right? Mars and Cancer. And when they do that, there can be some sense of, you know, like regretting it, right? Mars is in shadow, regretting it. You know, you say some things, you do some things, you kind of rip off the Band-Aid, you decide to end something and separate or deviate from a support system or a relationship. And then you realize, or you will realize, that actions have consequences, right? This full moon was seated back in, I think it was March or April of this year, when we had a new moon in Chiron, a solar eclipse, new moon conjunct Chiron. So that solar eclipse was at 19 degrees. And now 6 months later, this becomes a full moon. Well, thank God it's not an eclipse, but it was seated during an eclipse. And back then, Mars was conjunct Saturn in Pisces, so there was this sense of kind of swimming through the cosmic soup, and we couldn't figure out why we were so frustrated, or, you know, all the invisible things that were kind of holding us back. And now everything comes full circle, and it's like, okay, if you're still feeling that way, you know, for some people, you got to put your money where your mouth is, and if you really do want to be on your own, then that's going to come with some consequences. You know, the Mars square means you might have to move out, or you may have to, you know, sell your house if you really want to separate, or you may really have to confront, you know, the family member who you're having some issues with, and it may disrupt the ability to maintain relationships with other people. As much as I hate to say all of these things, and I know it can be difficult to hear, that's the truth of the matter. The way out of this, in my opinion, is to recognize that one way or another, whether you're looking at the end of this week when the sun squares Pluto, or you're looking at down the road as we get to November when Mars opposes Pluto, these things are still going to happen, right? Like as an astrologer, for me, when I'm doing a session for a client, I have to see it at least 3 separate times. I can't just look at one square or full moon and go, yeah, this is going to end. You know, I need to see it in the progression. I need to see it also in a solar return. I need to see other aspects, squares, conjunctions, oppositions that are pointing to the same thing. This is one of those situations where I'm telling you guys, it's pointing to the same thing. Whether it's the full moon conjunct Chiron, full moon square Mars, Mars opposed Pluto, sun square Pluto, same shit. You know, it's going to be the same thing. And I believe that anything that's going on right now where we're really feeling like we're getting our ass kicked is intentional. It's because the pressure has been turned up, the heat on the stove has been turned up with Pluto at 29, because we got to complete something. We have to finally stand up to something or someone, right? And it may feel scary, it might feel like a bully or something we don't want to deal with, but we got to do it. And we can't be afraid of change. We can't stay too comfortable. I think with Mars in Cancer, some of us are like, well, where would I live if I left my relationship? Or, you know, what would I do if I kicked out my roommate? Or, you know, I don't know if I want to move back home. But there are some things that we know we got to do right now. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, next year when Saturn and Neptune go into Aries, I feel wholeheartedly that a lot of us will be actually really prepared because we've had eclipses in Aries for, 2 years at that point. We've had the North Node in Aries there as well. So we'll be ready. Just don't, I would say, don't delay the inevitable. And for some of us, when the pain of staying the same becomes unbearable, we have no other option but to change. And it's obvious that some of the changes that we're making throughout the next week or the next couple of months are going to have a ricochet effect, and it's going to impact a lot of other areas of our chart. So I know that it's complicated. Some of you guys are sitting there going, yes, I understand you, I hear you, but, it's going to have a domino effect in my life and affect all these other things. And I would say, and, do it anyway, because it's going to be easier to do it willingly rather than to hang out and wait. And I think a full moon conjunct Chiron, for some of us, we're going to feel the pain of, I should have done it sooner, or I knew this was coming. And even though I knew it was coming, it doesn't make it any easier, if you guys get what I'm saying. All right, so the 17th, we see all that stuff going on. It's a full moon. At least it's sextiling Jupiter. So, writing down your wishes, being optimistic, going like, yeah, this sucks, but I'm going to make lemonade, right? Or this is really difficult, but I'm optimistic that it's the best choice. Keep it moving. Focus on moving forward. Try to be optimistic about the experiences that you're having and what you're learning. And also you can voice your pain, telling somebody else, this isn't easy for me either. This is really difficult for me as well. That may be one of the things that kind of come from the sextile, obviously, to Jupiter. Now, we've also got Venus at 29. So obviously, having a full moon in Aries, we're not just looking at Mars. I'm looking at Venus being like, because Mars is the dispositor of Venus, right? Scorpio. And Venus at 29, critical turning point in love and money, right? And Venus is, going through the sign that deals with death, sex, passion, regeneration, ending, beginning. But also, I think Venus in Scorpio is like about where you've been wronged or, where you feel like people have betrayed us or where we didn't have security, And then we see Venus sextile Neptune. And by the way, it has been throughout the opposition to Uranus earlier this week, it has been trine Neptune. So there is this sense of like, well, if you love something, do we let it go? Do we love them anyway? Are we going to be unconditional with our love? Is that scary? So 17th Venus sextiles Pluto, which is relaying a lot of the same stuff. Venus is connected to the sun, which is squaring Pluto. Oh, power struggles in relationships, something has to end. At least Venus sextile Pluto here is like giving us the power to make the decision to let something go. It is also about releasing or letting go of control. Once again, 29s are the energy of the destroyer. So what is being destroyed, right? Something revolving around secrets, something revolving around debt, joint resources, assets. I mean, that kind of stuff is kind of coming up here. And sextile is a Venusian aspect. So it is about being a little bit more open to change, to empowerment, to vulnerability, right? It can also be about intimacy, and it can be about exchange of resources as well. Well, the full moon, which starts very early in the morning, depending on where you are, anywhere, at least in the United States, in my part of the world, is going to be early. But then we're going to see the moon continue to keep moving through Aries. And then halfway through the day, it comes into a square with Pluto. So this full moon isn't really going to feel like over. I think maybe until we see the moon ingress into Taurus and it starts making some easier aspects, which will definitely not be the 17th. So yes, the full moon is over by the time you get to midday on Thursday, but there's other things that are kind of in the skies, which is kind of making this last a little bit longer. It does look like it's going to be in the afternoon hours that the moon is going to go into Taurus, but right before it does, obviously that square to Pluto is where we're feeling emotionally reactionary on an individual level because we feel like there's something that is threatening us or has some kind of power over us, which has already been in the skies with some of the full moon. Lots of 29s, 29, 29, 29. And then we're going to see the moon go into Taurus in the mid-afternoon. We also see Venus go into Sagittarius. And when the moon's in Taurus, because it's ruled by Venus, we're looking at Venus, and the moon quincunxes Venus. So in a way, it's kind of like, okay, now we want to stabilize, we want to ground our energies, we want to focus on security. But there's something that the moon and Venus are not reconciling with. They're not seeing eye to eye with things. I think this is going to be about like international news of like some banks starting to kind of like fracture or like going under or seeing some issues that could have impact, like a domino impact on other markets. That's kind of the feeling that I get. So the moon's going to go through Taurus. It's not really going to do much. Unfortunately, into the evening, the moon's starting to come into an opposition with Mercury. So it doesn't bode well for like communication matters because at least the exalted moon in Taurus is like stable, solid, and secure. But the opposition to Mercury is like, especially in Scorpio, critical information and exchange revolving around data, goods, money, resources, like passwords, like that kind of stuff. So it's not a great communication aspect. So if there has been some intensity on, Thursday throughout the day because of the full moon, we're still not seeing eye to eye in relationships, and we're also not able to communicate very well. So this is going to roll pretty much all day. Now, if you're a Sag, Sun, Moon, Rising, obviously Venus coming into your sign is good. It does bless you in some way. It does bring some sweetness. So I think that it's going to be beneficial for you guys. So we'll talk about what that means in a minute. And then this will take us to Friday the 18th. And when we wake up in the morning on Friday, the moon is still in Taurus. It's now starting to come out of the opposition with Mercury. So it could be a better time for like communicating and being able to talk to others. And the first real aspect this is going to make is a sextile to Saturn. So if we're able to kind of pause and reflect and take a second to think about things and feel our way into stuff, we can make better grounded, financial decisions, life decisions, purchases, things like that. What else is going to happen on Friday? That's pretty much it. So Friday's like a calmer day. There's nothing really kind of going on. Communication gets better as the day goes on when the moon starts kind of moving away from the opposition to Mercury. So very unaspected moon for the most part. The only thing you're going to see is kind of midday, that moon sextile Saturn, but it's building from the morning. So that's pretty much the only thing that you're going to see on this day. And Venus is the dispositor. So that's why I say that, Venus going into a new sign and not seeing the moon, it could represent that there are some parts of the world that are seeing some pretty significant fluctuations and changes going on with money. And I think Venus going through Sag, I'm wondering if it's going to be like stimulus packages, money that's being printed or handed out in some countries that's meant to be stimulating the economy and helping people be more optimistic about, what they're spending or what they're buying. And that's not inevitably going to settle well with the markets in general as a whole, kind of like globally. Right, and we may see that when Venus squares Saturn. We may see that when Venus quincunxes Uranus. I don't know. It may have a delayed effect, but I see the possibility of that. And people being more optimistic about, everything's going to be fine, or something is kind of swinging. But something, to me, like whenever I see Venus going through Sag or anything going through Sag, scoring any like Saturn or Neptune in Pisces, I'm like, some things are going to sound too good to be true, or they're going to be spun in a way that's like, it's not that bad, or, you know, it'll be a soft landing and it may not be. So that's just kind of like what comes to mind. So the moon's going to keep going through Taurus. You're not going to see too many other aspects into the evening. And then that's now going to bring us to Saturday. So Friday's a pretty calm day. I think we need it after that full moon, honestly. All right, so Saturday, the 19th, all right, we wake up with a moon conjunct Uranus, so we're feeling electric. We are kind of feeling like, okay, I'm a little antsier, I'm on edge, you know, manage caffeine, be mindful also of impulsive spending with Moon Uranus and Taurus. What I do think is interesting is that we are seeing a sextile to Neptune. So we're listening to our intuition, feeling guided when it comes to making physical financial changes. And this sextile forms a yod to the sun in Libra, where it's shining a light on relationships and partners and who helps us feel more stable or secure, who makes us, you know, feel good about ourselves. And also the yod forming to Neptune, where it's like, you know, is it possible for people to come in and shine a light on things that we can't see ourselves and highlight things that we need to be more aware of and kind of give us some pointers and some direction? The yod is a fortuitous aspect. It's considered a finger of fate, right? So fateful relationship things, changing our values, our resources, our mind, right? And then what else are we going to see here? We will see, right? The moon is going to sextile Mars. So we're feeling emotionally incentivized to take action and make some change or do something around the home maybe or domestically. And it's also, what else is it going to do? Okay, we're also going to see then later in the day, the moon will trine Pluto, which is a pretty powerful aspect. So I kind of feel like there's some fateful things that are happening on Saturday. So the moon will conjunct Uranus. We can see some fluctuations with money, resources, and values. And then it will trine Pluto. And that's about feeling emotionally empowered, right? Physically safe, secure. We've got what we need. And maybe it's because we're listening to our gut. You know, our gut's telling us Taurus things, you know, to have cash, to have food, to have resources, to focus on stability, to ground, right? To go and be in nature, to focus on like gardening or cooking. And then we're going to see the moon will then shift into Gemini midday on Saturday. I guess it's actually closer to early afternoon, but moon's in Gemini, so vibe change. We're not as kind of comfortable, grounded. You know, it's more social when the moon's in Gemini. We're kind of wanting to go out and do things, move around a little bit. So this can be a time where we're feeling more inclined to be like, you know, I want to go out for a walk. I want to hang out in my neighborhood. I want to call a friend. I want to go out of town for the night. And we're looking at Mercury. And Mercury is starting to come into a trine with Saturn, right? Not much else other than that, but still some support here. So it's more about emotional information, intuition, you know, what we're uncovering, what we're finding out, what we're researching. And it looks like the moon's going to oppose Venus. So to me, this looks like a sense of longing on Saturday night. Like, oh, I wish I could be with that person. I'm going to be somewhere else. You know, I wish I could make it your party, but unfortunately I have other plans, or I'm going to be out of town. That kind of stuff. A longing for something, because Venus in opposition to the moon, it seems like something that's like enticing or that is going to make us feel more comfortable. So it can be a time where there's like love that comes up at a distance, somebody, you know, from further away that you're connecting with. That's possible. And that's the last aspect that we're going to be seeing on Saturday night, the 19th. So we're going to keep moving forward. And this is going to take us into Sunday, the 20th. So this will be a week from now if you're watching on Sunday. And in the morning, that moon is still in Gemini. And it looks like it's going to catch a square to Saturn later in the day. Yeah. So it's coming out of the opposition with Venus. Now the moon in Gemini, which is mobile, chatty, communicative, you know, very social, squares Saturn. So it does look like there's some like challenges, delays, hangups, like some travel related issues or some delays happening on Sunday the 20th. Communication issues can be happening. Although once again, Mercury trine Saturn, like we can overcome some of these mutable squares as long as we're kind of digging deep. And I think Mercury in Scorpio is like learning to read between the lines. You know, it's like learning to like intuitively kind of read people. And it's a vibe, it's reading their body language, it's asking the questions that, you know, most people wouldn't ask also, trying to kind of get down to the details of a situation and having some in-depth kind of connection of some kind. But still, delays, travel-related things, communication-related things can kind of happen here. And then the moon is going to keep moving through Gemini. And it looks like as we're going into the PM hours, it's starting to come into a conjunction with Jupiter. So this can be better for traveling later in the evening, communicating later in the evening, writing, learning, you know, sharing. And you'll see overnight, the moon will come into conjunction with Jupiter, which is good for events Sunday night, and then it's going to trine the sun. So there's going to be something that's going to kind of open up, especially in terms of communication with others. It's funny, I'm looking at that, I'm like, oh, I'm flying back into town that day, so I'm a little relieved to see that conjunction in that trine. Maybe I won't have a flight delay. So the other thing to take into consideration is on the 20th, you know, the sun has hit 28 degrees, so it's now coming into a square with Pluto. So if we go through the timeline of, okay, end of September, you know, Venus in Libra squared Pluto, something wasn't feeling good, there was some emotions, some issues, some jealousy, some animosity, maybe some negative love and money stuff that was coming up. And then the beginning of this week, so today, if you're watching this on Sunday the 13th, Mercury is squaring Pluto, and something's coming to mind. We're writing it down, we're realizing it. On the 20th, the sun squares Pluto, and it means we have to execute. Right? We have to be like, this ends, you know, or now I'm pulling the plug on this situation, quite literally, sun square Pluto. I look at Venus and I look at Saturn, right? Because they're going to be connecting to the sun and also Pluto, and Venus is coming into a square with Saturn. It's within a 10-degree range, which tells me that relationships or diplomacy or allies are going to be challenged. And I think it's going to be international. I think it's going to be about international relations. I think it's going to be about leaders. I think it's also going to be about whether or not certain individuals are complying with like a larger agenda or if they're breaking away from that, right? And if they're learning how to kind of connect and communicate with other people. That's going to be the last aspect. Over Sunday evening, while most of us are sleeping, the moon is going to come into conjunction with Jupiter. And then we will see in the morning both a trine on Monday to the sun. So Monday actually looks like a pretty decent day, but also a square to Neptune. So we're going to have a good day for, like, I would say Monday would be good for like meetings on the 21st. So like meetings and things like that. So if you know that you have to like send a letter, connect with somebody, start writing something, get ready to launch a website. If you want to, you know, like focus on like having a study day, the 21st is going to be good for that. All right. So I'd like to show you guys really quickly and take you through Venus in Sag. And just to give you a quick, you know, kind of look at where Venus is moving through in your chart. So you can see where there's like a little bit of sweetness coming in. So I am a Western astrologer. I practice Western tropical astrology. I am not a Vedic astrologer. To make the most of my predictions, I really recommend listening to your rising sign. That's going to tell you in zodiacal order where Venus is moving in the skies in your chart. Obviously, the house is going to show you where there is going to be more focus on relationships and resources and potentially even like financial stuff. Listen for your rising sign. You can also listen for your sun and your moon sign as well. You'll see some truth from all of them. And I'm using the whole sign method. So if you use Placidus, that's totally fine. You just need to see which house is 0 degrees of Sag. You might have to listen to more than one of the rising predictions, okay? So as a reminder for my Taurus and my Libra risings, this is important for you guys because your chart ruler is on the move, so pay attention, please, as well as Sagittarius, sun, moon, and rising placements. This is a good transit for you guys as Venus is going to be kind of giving you some cosmic kisses. So I'm going to start first with my Aries and Aries risings, all right? So for you guys, you have Venus transiting through the 9th house in the sign of Sagittarius. You'll have this for the better part of like almost the next month. The themes for Venus transiting through the 9th house obviously is going to be about adventure in love and seeking new horizons, going new places. Venus is about investments, money, indulgence, or spending, as well as relationships. So for some Aries placements, it is possible that you might see that there is the start of a new romantic or business relationship that can be forming with this transit. I would really focus on broadening your social circle as well, connecting with people from different backgrounds or different places. And I think the lesson with Venus going through this part of your chart is balancing your need for freedom with commitment, right? And knowing what that means in relationships and like how to express that to people or how to share that with other people. Pretty soon, Mars is going to go retrograde in your 5th house. So there is going to be a lot of reworking, something revolving around either creativity, your self-expression, your romance, your love life. A lot of you guys just had a solar eclipse in your 7th. So that can also be kind of indicating that there's new relationships on the horizon. And so you might be out there looking for that or wanting to learn more about love. Some of you guys might also be like working with a new teacher or a new mentor, or maybe you're planning travel or you're going somewhere. That can be happening with this transit as well. Okay? Good luck, Aries. We've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You are going to be experiencing Venus's transit through the sign of Sagittarius in your natal 8th house. All right, Taurus, well, you're ruled by Venus, and Venus going through the 8th house, I think it's kind of like a sexy transit, to be honest with you. I think it's a good one. When planets go through the 8th house, obviously there is a change, right? There is going to be a change in relationships, even within yourself. The themes of the 8th house is about expanding your financial horizons, and this could be joint resources, investments. It could be cashing out on something. It could be talking to your partner about their money. I do predict that, you might be investing a little bit more in education or even in travel. You might be willing to spend a little bit more on travel, or maybe you're putting some travel on the credit card this month. Relationships might go through a transformation, but it's about your shared beliefs in partnerships and relationships. And Venus is also connected to your 6th house of health, habits, and routine. So some Taurus and Taurus risings are experiencing a change in their health. They are going through a change in health practitioners. They're spending a little bit more money on their pets. Maybe they're spending a little bit more money on mental health or detoxing programs and things like that. I do think the lesson here is to really focus on, investing in experiences rather than just accumulating wealth. Like Taurus is a sign that's about like physicality because you're an earth sign. But you're looking at things going like, okay, do I want to have things or do I want to have experiences? And right now I think you're focused more on having experiences. So be willing to spend a little bit more money on adventure and how that can totally change and transform something about your relationship to others or even like your intimacy. Okay? Good luck. We've got Gemini and Gemini rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Venus transiting through the sign of Sagittarius in your natal 7th house. Good transit for you guys. Obviously, Venus likes being in the 7th house because of its association with that house traditionally through Libra. And, 7th house Venus transit definitely can bring in a new relationship. Whether you're single or in a relationship, it does not matter. There are people who show up basically to support you. 7th house could also be your marketplace. So it's what you have to offer. So if you're putting out new offers, new services, new products, this is a good transit. It can be a time where, you're bringing in a new romantic partner because Venus's connection to your 5th, or a new playmate, or you're deepening the relationship in a current partnership and committing more seriously. Maybe it means that you're kind of exploring more of the emotional side of your relationships because of Venus's connection to the 12th house. Now, I really see this as a time where you're attracting partners who may be from different cultures, or they might have exotic backgrounds. So they could be foreigners, they could have a different kind of ethnic background. It could also be people who are adventurers, travelers, teachers, even like publishers, people who are going to be very kind of Jupiterian-like because of the Sag connection. And I would encourage you to look beyond the surface in relationships and seek deeper connections, because I do feel like there's an opportunity to have a really profound spiritual kind of connection to somebody who can kind of come in at this time if you're single. And if you're in a committed relationship, it's just a deepening of that kind of commitment in that relationship. And it's going to be interesting to see like Venus go through your 7th house and oppose Jupiter, because I feel like this is going to be a time where if you are single, it's just bringing somebody in like a magnet. It may also mean that it's bringing in lots of clients, or it's bringing in some kind of supportive, partnership or relationship that can also be connected to your career. So it could be a very strong time where you're bringing in lots of people who you're either working with or potential like clients. Okay. Good luck. I hope you guys enjoy that transit. It's a fun one. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You, Cancer, will be experiencing Venus transiting through Sagittarius in your natal 6th house. For you guys, obviously this can be a period of career advancement, and also this can be a period where you're focusing on like your health. Like there's opportunities for your health actually to improve as it goes through the 6th house. Health habits, routines, office space, all of that stuff. Pets even, or maybe spending a little bit more money on health and wellness, or like med spas, day spas, that kind of stuff. Venus is connected to your 4th house of home and family, and it's also connected to your 11th house, which deals with friendships, goals, and allies. So what a time to be like cleaning and organizing and kind of sprucing up your house, for the festivities, for the holidays. You could be doing that. It could also be a time where you're giving some kind of support, or you're helping take care of like a family member or a loved one. It is possible that you're opting for like group fitness opportunities. So you can be going to classes and like working out and doing things like that. Maybe you're setting up, or you're kind of like decorating or designing what can be an office space with Venus being in this particular sign as well. I do feel like help is coming from others. And so I don't know if this is like calling a friend in need, or if this can be, friends who are helping you with a change in your home or a living situation. That can kind of come up as well. And if you're looking for a job, or if you're looking to improve your health, definitely Venus going through this part of your chart can make that possible, and it can bring in the necessary partnerships or relationships to facilitate growth in those areas. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. We've got Leo and Leo rising. You'll be experiencing Venus's transit through the sign of Sagittarius in your natal 5th house. Leo, I think you're going to like this one, especially because the 5th house is all about like romance and creativity and, anything revolving around self-expression, dating, children, self-employment, taking risks. So Venus going through this house is a fun house. It's definitely a good time for romance. And Venus is connecting to your career status and your reputation, as well as your 3rd house of communication, travel, announcements, learning. So you may be, with this transit, making an announcement of some kind. It could be, oh, here's my new website, or here's what I've been working on, or here's my new social media. But it could also be like, oh my God, my kid's getting married, or I just met somebody and we're together. It could also be a time where there's big announcements going on revolving around your children. So it could be announcing that you're having kids. It could be something big going on with one of your children. I love this also for like adventurous like date nights. I feel like Venus and Sag in the 5th house is like, needing to go and do something where there's some excitement. So there can be like traveling and like holidays that you can go on throughout this transit, or that you can be planning. I also feel like there is going to be opportunities for you maybe to, be embracing your different hobbies, or, other things that might be like pastimes. That's going to be more playful and kind of creative. And this can involve like writing or learning, or anything revolving around self-expression or creativity. So all of that kind of like 5th house stuff. Okay. Good luck. We've got Virgo and Virgo rising. You will be experiencing Venus's transit through the sign of Sagittarius in your natal 4th house. Well, I like this transit. I know that it's going to be like squaring everything in your chart if you have Virgo placements. But Venus in the 4th house is a really great time where you're focusing on your home, and it can be about, beautifying your home, bringing in new furniture, bringing in art, designing things, looking at property, buying property. major kind of home shifts. And sometimes it manifests as like a woman coming to stay and visit you, or a woman staying in your home. Venus is connected to your second house of possessions, personal style, resources, and spending. It's also connected to your ninth house, which is about faraway places, culture, education, and your beliefs. So you may be purchasing things from your home or for your home that's coming from like further away. There may be somebody coming to visit you or stay with you from further away. It's also possible that you're doing some kind of like distant learning or education from home. And I just feel like Venus in the fourth house is about making things beautiful and comfortable and cozy. And, you know, maybe it's going to be about finding the perfect space, or maybe it's going to be about kind of designing something and making it seem like a little bit more, like colorful. Venus in Sag, I feel like, is going to be like kind of brighter, or there's going to be like a little bit more like excitement in terms of how your space looks in the fourth house. Okay. Good luck. We've got Libra and Libra rising. Obviously for you, Libra, this is important because Venus rules your chart. So wherever Venus is where you are. Venus also has connections to your eighth house of joint resources and other people's money. And Venus is moving through the sign of Sagittarius in your natal third house. So for you, Libra, I see this as a time where, you know, you might really be focusing more on like third house things and your relationship to those things. So I think of like luxury investments with Venus. You know, you might be spending more money on your car. You might be thinking about getting a car, or spending more money on books, education, learning. It may also mean that there's going to be maybe like learning something that's connecting to investment, right? Eighth house, or having conversations with female relatives about, you know, change, transformation, metaphysics, like occult related things. You could be traveling with Venus here in the third house. That's very possible. Usually it's like short distance trips or quick, you know, weekend trips and kind of going back and forth. And this is a time also where you can enjoy yourself more if you're going to be active in like writing or social media or working on websites or anything revolving around like communications. The one thing that I would say, and I would say this for everybody, but especially for my Tauruses and my Libras, the Venus square Saturn is a transit you kind of want to be mindful of. So there is like a sense with this transit that there can be some things that are kind of coming in traveling wise, but it is going to come into a square with Saturn. So there is this sense of, well, how much travel can I swing, you know, or how is my health doing, or do I have time, you know, to be studying and also like working. So there may be some scheduling things you have to deal with, but nevertheless, you know, pay attention to female relatives. They kind of come into the mix. Pay attention also to finding ways to kind of like improve or better your method of transportation. Maybe it can be that you're like investing in like a gadget, like a phone or a computer, that can be coming up throughout this transit for you as well. Good luck. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You will be experiencing Venus's transit through the sign of Sagittarius in your natal second house. All right, Scorpio. So for you guys, Venus likes being in the second house, right? The second house is always about your money, your resources, your spending power. Anything revolving around also your personal style, your self-esteem, and just like income in general. Not so much how you make it, it's how you spend it. So when you have Venus in the second house, it's kind of highlighting your 12th house and also your 7th house. So that means that you may be kind of feeling intuitively guided to spend money in a certain way, or maybe there are some surprises revolving around how you're spending money, or there is some unexpected money that kind of lands in your lap. Venus connecting to the 7th house means that you might be spending more money on others, or maybe there is a sense of needing to give gifts, or maybe obviously, you know, we're kind of coming into your birthday season. You know, maybe you're spending money on, you know, new personal style related items. Maybe people are giving you gifts throughout this transit. That can happen here as well. But I do think it's a strong period financially, because this is the first planet to move through this particular house. So Venus will go through there, then Mercury will go through there, then the Sun will go through there, and you'll have a retrograde there. And I think with some of the oppositions between your 2nd and your 8th is a lot of like how much money you have, what you're spending, what you're investing in, you know, how you're managing debt, how you're paying things off. And it can be lots of conversations revolving around like your spending habits in relation to a partner's. And so there can be some sense of, okay, you know what? Like I'm receiving more from a partner. I'm receiving more from a tax refund, an inheritance, some kind of payout or insurance matter. So it can actually make you feel like there's some gains in your resources and you have a little bit more spending power throughout this transit. Okay? Good luck. We've got Sag and Sag rising. You'll be experiencing Venus's transit through your sign Sag, and if you're a Sag rising, it's going through your first house. Obviously, Venus has connections to your 11th, which is about socializing, friends, allies, and networks, as well as your 6th house, which deals with health habits, daily routines, your coworkers, and also, I would say, your pets. So, first of all, Venus in the first house means that this is generally a transit where there is more socializing, there is more love, there is a sense of you looking good, feeling good, more so than usual. I would advise you to steer clear of the Venus square Saturn transit when it comes to making like changes to your beauty routine, your appearance, your look, right? And also like purchasing property, buying things for your home, like furniture and stuff. Like be mindful of the Venus square Saturn. But in your first house, it's like, yeah, you know, maybe you're feeling like you're having a bit of a glow up, or there is this sense of you feeling a little bit like more attractive or a little bit more confident. Obviously, Jupiter is connected to Venus, and Jupiter's in your 7th house. So there is like a sense of being seen by other people being interested in you. If you're single, people are just going to like walk right up to you. They're going to be more attracted than usual, or they're going to be a little bit more forthcoming about their interests than usual. You can bring in clients. You can bring in also like a lot more attention, you know, because the 7th house can be about how you're seen by others. Or people being like, you know, where did friends will be asking you, like, where did you get that jacket? Or like, what did you do differently about your hair? Or like, they'll be asking you questions about your beauty routine. This will also bring you opportunities for you to just feel like more willing to kind of socialize and connect with other people, especially when it comes to people at work, relationships with coworkers, things revolving around services. So if you have a business where you provide services, or even just spending a little bit more like, you know, TLC time, like with your pets and your furry creatures. With Venus on the ascendant, you might notice that they're a little bit more like affectionate towards you with this transit, okay? Good luck. We have Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You'll be experiencing Venus transit through the sign of Sagittarius in your natal 12th house. So for you, my Capricorns, Venus is connected to your career in the 10th house, and it's also connected to your 5th house, which deals with like romance, children, creativity, self-expression. So are some Capricorns and Capricorn risings experiencing a situation where you are falling out of love with your job? Are you having an inner office kind of secret romance? Are you feeling more inclined to want to work behind the scenes and you don't want to be so out in the public and interacting with people at work? You know, are you kind of wanting to be kind of left alone? Do you feel more inspired, more creative? Is there a sense of you wanting to travel or study something connecting to metaphysics, or something kind of connected to, you know, Sagittarius related things? Wanting to kind of give back, you know, humanitarian or nonprofit related things in the 12th house. But Venus, you know, tells me that you might be feeling like you're in the dark in regards to a matter revolving around children or your children, a romantic partner. There can also be like a really significant change coming from a relationship, because we're going to see your 10th house ruler come into a square with Saturn, and maybe you're breaking the news, you know, to a partner. Hey, I don't feel the same way anymore. Maybe you're breaking the news to your kids. Hey, I'm going through this big change. That can be kind of happening here as well. But Venus in the 12th house is very sacrificial. It's very spiritual. It can be a time where you're really kind of connecting with the goddess in a more divine kind of ritual way. So like through meditation or kind of like offerings, or doing things where you're like visualizing a new love or a new job, right? Or a new creative endeavor. It's something that you kind of want to do behind the scenes, because the 12th house is like what's hidden in subconscious, okay? Especially with like Mars opposing Pluto. And I'd be focusing on like my emotional health, my mental health with Venus in the 12th, especially as it's opposing your 6th house. It's like really looking at health and habits, and that could be relationships, or that could just be your daily routine. And maybe you're one of the signs that needs like a little bit more kind of lounge, you know, time to yourself than others. Good luck. We've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You'll experience Venus's transit through Sagittarius in your natal 11th house. So this is kind of tying in the home ruler, right? 4th house Taurus, as well as the 9th house ruler, Libra. So in the 11th, socializing, parties, gatherings, joining networks, meeting people, like that all happens, and you really enjoy being around other people during this period. I think it could be that you're either having people come and visit with you, right? Or you're going to other people's homes because of Venus, like house parties, family get-togethers, celebrations, things like that, decorating your home, having people over. That's great. And it may mean also that you're also focusing on like inviting people from further away, or if you have friends or family that are visiting, they might be traveling to see you, or vice versa. There can be like celebrations, so like birthday parties, you know, engagement parties, baby showers, like weddings, things that would bring people in and somehow bring the family or the friends together. I like this transit for you. I do feel like, you know, the air and the fire signs are going to manage this a little bit better than some of the other signs. And I think it really kind of makes you feel like inspired. And it might warm your heart seeing like all of the right people kind of coming together and being able to spend time with those that you really care about the most. I do feel like the 11th house is, you know, your audience too. So you can be getting more compliments. You can be getting more appreciation, more positive feedback from other people if you work in like a team environment, or if you're in a position where you're presenting and you're in front of other people, especially with like Jupiter being the dispositor of Venus. So it could be that, you know, maybe you're going to your friend's kid's birthday party, but it could also mean that if you're a creator, or if you have your own business, or maybe something that you write, if you're sharing it with other people, you're getting a lot of like really positive feedback. Okay? Good luck, Aquarius. And we have Pisces and Pisces rising. You guys get to experience Venus transit through Sagittarius in your natal 10th house. So this is about your career, your reputation, your public image. It does sweeten your relationships with people professionally. It is smoother for projects and, you know, if you're pitching projects or like trying to kind of bring in clients or get people on board and get recognition, especially if you work in beauty, finance, like, or art, it's going to be even better for some of you guys. With Venus going through there, it's kind of tying in your 3rd house of communications as well as your 8th house of other people's money. So I think of like contracts, negotiations, big statements, big announcements, launches of websites, things revolving around raising your prices, you know, getting bonuses or benefits or something of that nature is also possible as well. This is really where you start to get all of the, I think, positive feedback and recognition for all of the hard work that you have been doing throughout this last year personally. Yes, you're a mutable sign, so you're going to feel, you know, the squares that are going to be happening. And obviously Venus will be squaring Saturn and Neptune in your sign. So it can be about dealing with like women at work, like older bosses or like leaders of some kind. And on one hand, they can be giving you recognition for the fact that you've been improving, you're like doing a good job. But on the other hand, this can also be somebody who, because Venus is connected to your 8th house, can also be a little bit like more critical of you. So just be mindful with planets in the 10th house. You're a little bit more in the spotlight. You're a little bit more visible. And this is like the theme actually for you between now and the end of the year. And I think it's important to be receptive and open. You know, the squares to Saturn and Neptune is like, be confident, right? Try not to be dismissive, or try not to be afraid of connecting and kind of working with other people or putting yourself out there. Show people what you can do. And I think that you'll get a lot of positive feedback and recognition for some of your hard work. So I hope this is helpful for you guys in kind of getting a little bit of like insight into the Venus and Sagittarius transit for the next few weeks. But let me know, were you born with Venus in Sagittarius or Venus in opposition to Jupiter, or maybe even in your 9th house? I'd love to hear your stories, as well as you guys can come back throughout the week and update me and let me know how you're feeling with these energies. Be cool with some of the Pluto squares. I know it can be intense, but like I said, we want to work together, right? 2 is better than 1. And put a helmet on for that full moon in Aries, because it's going to be like quite a doozy. So make sure you give me a thumbs up if you like this. Share this with a friend who likes astrology. If they need some help in navigating the cosmos and kind of planning out their week, make sure you subscribe. That way you guys can stay in touch with me. I have videos out every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And just a heads up, guys, I will not be here on Friday. Okay, so I'm gonna be traveling, but I will catch you next week. So we're skipping tarot this week, but I will be back next week and we'll do astrology. Definitely check out my memberships and stuff if you guys want to support me. I'm a full-time content creator. Or you guys can check out my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. I only have a handful of appointments left for the rest of 2024. Honestly, I think I have like 2 days left in December and that's it. But you guys can also check out my courses, or if you would like to book a personal reading with me, I have some available going into the new year, and I'm actually getting ready to put out a bunch of new services and some other things pretty soon. So join my newsletter while you're there. I won't spam you, I promise. You'll just get updates when I have new courses or products that are available. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will catch all of you back here very soon. Take care.